top of a glass cheese dome that I purchased at Home Goods for under $10. I love Home Goods, it's one of my favorite stores. And this right here is a vinyl letter that I have cut out of permanent vinyl. And this is, I believe, from the Samantha font. Okay. So what I want to point out to you in this video is that I have weeded out the positive part of the J because this is the area that I want to have etched. And before I cut it, I used my rectangle drawing tool to put a box around the J so that I would have all of this excess vinyl as a barrier between the etching cream and my glass. So the part that's peeled out is what is going to be etched. So that's really important. So you're technically taking out the negative, and that's what you're left with is a negative. You're taking out the positive and you're left with the negative of the letter. So once that's weeded, what I'm going to do is take my transfer tape right here. This piece is probably a little bigger than I need, but it's what I had handy. And using my squeegee, I'm going to squeegee this all down nice and tight and peel off the backing. And actually, I think I am going to go ahead and cut down that transfer tape so I don't have such a hot mess getting it around this curve. Sometimes working on curved items like this glass dome can be a little tricky. All right, so now I've got my letter in the vinyl on the with the transfer tape, and I'm going to line this up. Now, here's a little trick. I used a square for a reason because now I can line up the bottom of my square with my edge of my glass there so I know that it's straight. And I'm going to go ahead and squeegee this down very carefully around the edges of the letter. That's the most important part when you're glass etching. This is very different than when you are working with vinyl and you want it to lie flat. So that's pretty much what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt to peel off this transfer tape and work with it just a little bit more. There we go. Now you can see there are bubbles and wrinkles out here. That doesn't matter for what we're doing. This vinyl is simply a stencil. So I'm going to go ahead and smooth this out and not worry about all of this out here. What's really important in glass etching is to make sure that where the glass etch cream is going to be, there are no bumps or wrinkles or gaps. And I generally will take a squeegee, and this is actually the squeegee I'm going to use to spread the cream. And I'm just going to squeegee all this down and make sure it's nice and tight around those edges. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. I'm happy with that. So don't worry about these bubbles out here. This just doesn't matter at all. Now, I want to be very careful that I don't get any etching cream anywhere around this edge of this, anywhere else on the glass other than right here. So what I'm going to use is painter's tape. I'm going to take some of this painter's tape and put it around the edges, and I'm not going to make you watch while I do that, so I'm going to stop just a second. Now we've got this painter's tape lined up all around the edges of my vinyl so that I don't have any drip over and get onto the glass. And again, don't worry about all this. I know it makes people who use vinyl nervous that there's all these bubbles, but it's not a problem. And pour some of this out onto the edges here. Sometimes a popsicle stick is helpful. I like to put a lot of it out and work with it. You can always put it back in. Remember, this is reusable. Okay, so when I've got a blob of this here, whoops, be careful. If you drop this anywhere, it's instantaneous and it will etch right wherever it touches. And so I'm going to carefully kind of pull it across the other areas like this. You don't want to move it around more than you have to, but you want to make sure you have a nice thick coat over all of the area that you want to have etched. Pull this down here like this. And just pretty much you want a nice, thick, even coat. We're going to let this sit for about 15 minutes, and then I'm going to wash it off and come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, so I went to my sink. First, I scraped off all the excess cream off of the glass and put it back in the jar so it could be used again. And then I went to the sink and rinsed off all of the cream that I hadn't scraped off that was on there. And I rinsed it off really carefully to be sure that I got all of the cream off before I remove the vinyl. And you want to do that because if you don't get all the cream rinsed off and you peel the vinyl and it touches something else, it'll etch. And at that point, I peeled off all the vinyl and the painter's tape to reveal the beautiful letter J here. Let me see if I can get it so that you can see it. It's hard on glass to see